We start at 5 o'clock with breaking news in Portland, a shooting involving a U.S. Marshal. This is in inner southeast near 11th and Ash. Details are still coming in.
And let's bring in our Alma McCarty at the scene. Alma, marshals are responsible for protecting federal judges. They're also often involved in arresting the most dangerous of fugitives. What's the latest? What do we know?
Well, Laurel, David, the shooting call came in just before 2:30 this afternoon, and detectives, as you can see behind me, are still on scene here. PPB is the responding agency with this. To be clear, they are not involved with this shooting call. As you said, that is the U.S. Marshals Service, the agency that was involved here. This is some video that we shot earlier this afternoon on the scene. At this time, we know at least one person was injured in the area of Southeast 11th and Ash Streets. This location closed off for several hours, and PPB estimates that it will still be closed well into the afternoon and evening here tonight. We are still waiting to learn more details about what led up to this shooting. PPB is asking for anyone who may have been witness to anything that happened here, to the shooting, to come forward with that information. But we will be sure to keep you updated with any updates that we get throughout this afternoon with this developing situation. For now, live in Southeast Portland, Alma McCarty, KGW News.
Thanks, Alma. Just recapping, one person injured there, a U.S. Marshal involved. It is unclear how right now. Stick with KGW. We're going to be across this all evening. The latest developments on air and online at KGW.com.
And we have breaking news that could affect your travel plans. Masks are no longer required at PDX Airport, and airlines are starting to drop their mask requirements as well. It comes after a federal judge in Florida struck down the federal mandate. We reached out to PDX, and they told us just minutes ago local TSA just advised us they will no longer be enforcing the directive that requires masking in the airport. To that end, people in the airport are not required to wear a face covering. We recognize that travelers and airport employees will have mixed feelings about this sudden change. We ask that people be kind and respectful of a person's individual decision to wear a mask or not. We have more details for you on the change at KGW.com. Also developing, one teenager is dead and several other teens are recovering from a shooting last night.
Now, Galen Etlin joins us now. Galen, you talked to the grandmother of some of the victims as well as to community advocates. I can imagine this has really been a very tough 24 hours. What did they tell you?
Absolutely, David, Laurel. They say that this is a community in pain right now and that the violence just keeps happening. This is what we know about what happened last night. This is on Southeast 162nd and Stark, just on the edge of Portland and Gresham. One teenager is dead and 3 others were sent to the hospital. Police on scene last night told me it may have been a drive-by shooting, but they are still working on those details, and we don't know exactly what happened or led up to this. I did speak with a woman whose son was shot in 2015, and she now works to end gun violence. And Mayor Ted Wheeler also put out a video statement calling on more resources to do so.
The bottom line is we're significantly under-resourced as a local community to solve these crimes.
Because people are lying in dirt, and you can't come back from that. There's no coming back from death.
That was Lori Palmer there, who was also here last night to console grieving families. She says community groups really need support right now to reach these neighborhoods most impacted. And as you mentioned, David, I also met with the grandmother here of some of the victims, and she was not ready to share her story on camera, understandably, but she did share with me that the victims range in age from 14 to 17. She cried with me and just asked, how could this happen? And our thoughts are with her and her family. I'm Galen Etlin. Back to you.
Boy, it's just heart-wrenching. Thank you, Galen. And now for more on that violent protest over the weekend. Several buildings were vandalized. A fire started outside a police precinct as well. And tonight, the president of the Portland Police Association is denouncing the destruction. Mike Benner is in Northeast Portland with more on this. Mike?
Yeah, Laurel, we are outside a Wells Fargo branch on Northeast MLK, and if I step out of the way, you'll notice the broken window pane here. This is a snapshot of the damage from the Saturday night protest. PPA President Aaron Schmaut says nothing, absolutely nothing good, comes from this sort of behavior. On Monday afternoon, we spotted this crew putting the finishing touches on the repairs to a TriMet bus shelter. This is just one of several pieces of property damaged during a protest late Saturday night.
It concerns me for the safety of my officers. It concerns me for the safety of our community.
Sergeant Aaron Schmautz, president of the Portland Police Association, expressing concerns about the 3 bus shelters, 2 banks, and 1 coffee shop vandalized. Not to mention the fires started inside a dumpster at the Portland Police Bureau's North Precinct. All of it happening during a vigil in March for Patrick Lyoya, a black man shot and killed by a police officer in Michigan back in early April.
There's a small group that seems to want to take any issue in the country and turn it into their own desire to damage and destroy our country and our city.
Schmautz points to the summer of 2020 when we saw weeks upon weeks of nightly protests. Schmautz says the time has come to end the unnecessary violence.
Our community needs to come together and look at, when we have legitimate discourse that needs to be had, how are we going to do it? You know, how are we going to have these conversations? And again, in a way that helps you get to where you want to go, but root out the people who desire to destroy your cause for their own bad intent.
Schmautz isn't alone in his frustration. We met several people on Sunday who are over the destruction of property.
I get why a lot of people are frustrated and angry and scared. But again, yeah, this just doesn't help anything.
Like, what is this about? This is really annoying.
Sergeant Schmautz agrees, but believes progress can be made.
I think that we can start moving in the right direction because it only takes a few times where people realize there is actual, like, I'm going to lose my freedom. I'm going to lose my money. I'm going to be uncovered. People are going to see who I am. And again, we've been going after people and trying to...
All right, Schmautz right there is referring to the prosecution of demonstrators responsible for this sort of vandalism. He says there's just not enough accountability, and perhaps he is onto something. We checked with the DA's office, and of the more than 1,100 protest cases referred to the DA since May 2020, approximately 900 of them have been tossed out. Back to you.
And I think a few people out there would have more choice words for this kind of behavior than annoying. Mike Benner in Northeast Portland. Thank you, Mike. Well, it's not too often we get a presidential visit, but as we enter primary season in a midterm election year, keep in mind, President Biden is going to make stops later this week in both Portland and Seattle. Let's bring in Brian Clerkley. Brian, what can we expect when the president arrives in Oregon on Thursday?
Hey, David. Well, we can expect there to be some talks about infrastructure. I spoke with Senator Ron Wyden earlier today about how important that is. He says the president will focus his visit on that, and he thinks the time is perfect for that important topic.
And the president has said, I just want to make time to listen to Americans on these big issues like infrastructure. And a lot of us in the delegation told him that we'd really welcome him and he'd get a very strong reception around these kinds of issues.
The details on President Joe Biden's visit to Portland are still being worked out, according to Oregon Senator Ron Wyden. But he expects the president to talk about the recent infrastructure bill, which was passed back in November. The state of Oregon is expected to get $1.2 billion over the next 5 years, and Washington is expected to get $1.8 billion.
So infrastructure is so important to our quality of life, our economy, and you simply cannot have big league job creation with little league infrastructure.
The I-5 bridge is one project that's a candidate for a big portion of the funds. The aging bridge does need to be replaced. When asked if President Joe Biden will address this project, Wyden had this to say.
The details of the trip are still being worked out, but my colleague who sits near me on the Senate Finance Committee, Senator Cantwell, worked on the language as it relates to that, and she feels that the language that she has worked on is very compatible with our being able to move ahead on the improvements.
The total price for the I-5 bridge is currently estimated to fall between $3.2 and $4.8 billion, with about $1 billion expected to come from Oregon and Washington, and the remainder coming from federal grant programs and tolling. And the president will also travel to Seattle on Friday, which happens to be Earth Day.
So the intersection of infrastructure, the economy, and perhaps climate change there. Brian, thanks very much.